Everybody, welcome to the show. Run the Nation right here. Jeff Waldorf with you on this Thursday evening. Big news day today, as it has been every day this week. I swear to God, we have had quite a bit of we got quite a bit of news. So fantastic. We've got the first, I guess, guilty plea when it comes to Russia. Right. Specifically, a Russian spy has just pled guilty to trying to influence the 2016 election. I've got that, of course. Then we have Republicans taking on Donald Trump from behind. Because, of course, they're not going to do things out in the open, but they are going to talk smack about him. That's fun. We also have Trump possibly destroying his attorney-client privilege, putting him in more legal jeopardy. That's interesting. Fun story there. We also have the Senate taking a vote on Yemen today and what happened. You're going to love that. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez also in the news, going after the media. Awesome. So fun stories today. Big show today. And so we're going to get to that. First off, thank you for joining. If you haven't already, please give us a like and a share. Share us out on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Google, etc. Do all that stuff. So that helps out the show. If you can't donate, using our Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation. Also, another way to help the show is to use the super chat. Oh, and by the way, not so subtle thing saying, hey, here we've got official merchandise now. And so this is one of the things that you can get. We have that in the description. I'm currently rocking some tea because my stomach, so tastes like awesome. You want to get your own TYT Nation mug, you can go to our Teespring store. That is located in the description of this video, so you can go find that and order that. You might be able to still get it before Christmas. So interesting. If you jump on it right now. We also have a t-shirt available too. So a little bit of merchandise. It goes to help continue the show as well. And you can take a little piece of TYT Nation home with you, since that is what you guys are. You are the TYT Nation. All right. So, yeah, again, a little bit of a weird endorsement, but hey, here we go. No, it's not Kai. It's actually stuff for my stomach. It's ginger something. I for some reason I forgot. Okay. Isn't that weird? I've got more important things to focus on, so like, for example, the Russians. So we're going to jump into that story here. And I know I'm going to sound like Maddow for this entire thing, which is weird, but it's in the news. It's in the news, so we're just going to go there. All right. So earlier today, alleged Russian spy Maria Butina changed her plea agreement to guilty. Now, according to different articles, one in Law and Crime and ABC News, as well as many others, they say that Russian spy Maria Butina has pleaded guilty today to one count of a conspiracy to act as a foreign agent as part of a plea deal that includes cooperation with the government. Now, Judge Tanya Chutkan had agreed to the plea change. Now, in it, Maria Butina had admitted that she had traveled to the United States to attend an NRA convention. And the reason that she wanted to do that is to meet members of the Republican Party. And the reason that she did that, of course, is to try to have some influence over the incoming Republican administration. So now, she, of course, was on orders from a Russian official handler. Now, she had asked whether she could develop a relationship with President-elect Donald Trump's inner circle. Now, was she able to do that? I don't necessarily know. We don't quite know yet, but she did make some inroads with the NRA. Now, the familiar phrase here, according to Law and Crime, is that Butina had admitted to doing this under the direction of a Russian official. Per ABC News, Butina admits, as part of the deal, according to a copy obtained by ABC News that is expected to be filed with the court, that she and an unnamed U.S. person, one, who we already apparently know, sources have identified as longtime Republican operative Paul Erickson, with whom she had had a multi-year romantic relationship. Talk about deep throat right there, in possibly more ways than one. I'm just saying. They had agreed and conspired with a Russian government official. This official, who I'm going to identify later on, and at least one other person, for Butina to act in the United States under the direction of a Russian official without prior notification to the Attorney General. So who is this Russian official? Well, officials believe that it is a man named Alexander Torshin. Now, Alexander Torshin has done a lot of business with the NRA and also happens to be the deputy governor of the Russian Central Bank. And look, if you're in a position of power in Russia, well then, look, you obviously have to be linked to the Russian leader, Vladimir Putin. So if you want to operate business or get into power in Russia, well, then you have to be friends with the Russian oligarchs, and one of them happens to be Vladimir Putin. So now, under his direction, the agreement said, she had sought to establish unofficial lines of communication with Americans having power and influence over U.S. politics. So note that, of course, it says unofficial because they want plausible deniability, which makes sense in this context. Now, in addition, Butina's GOP operative, her NRA-connected boyfriend Paul Erickson, was also implicated in the crime. Erickson allegedly agreed and conspired with Butina to achieve her mission of gathering that influence. So it's basically a way for the Russian government to gain influence inside the Trump administration in order to advance their goals, of course, for one, eliminating those pesky sanctions on Russian oligarchs. So that would be one of those things, right? And so that makes sense. Now, Erickson's lawyer, of course, came out and said that, and this is William Hurd, or Bill Hurd, he put out a statement, Paul Erickson is a good American. He's never done anything to hurt our country, and never would. Okay, yeah, but look, they say they never set out to hurt America, right? No, what they're doing is just they're willing to accept foreign help in order to help right-wingers get elected, whom they believe, of course, will ultimately save America. Well, obviously, I need all the help we can to beat the liberals, to own the libs, and oh, look, Russia is willing to help us. Oh, well, great. Well, we like the Russians anyway because they're right-wing, they're autocrats, they're plutocrats, oligarchs. Well, that's the kind of stuff that we want here in America. Well, I love that. So, of course, it makes sense. In fact, there's a lot of Republicans, conservatives, that look at Russia and they're like, oh, they're so anti-gay. Why can't we have that here? And they're super hyper-capitalist over there. And so, oh, we want that too. And we basically want one-party control over the country to enact our agenda. Oh, Russia, we love you. Now, here's the thing, right? I got bad news for those Republicans who love Russia. Russians don't give a fuck about helping America. You think they want us to be great? You think they want America to be great again? No. They either want to neutralize us as a world power or get our help in establishing Russia as a secondary major world power, right? Alongside with America in order to push both Russian and American goals. This is more about Russia, or I'm sorry, about making Russia great again, not America. Now, part of that, of course, as I said before, would be removing the sanctions on Russian oligarchs. See, it turns out when you mess with their money, as the Obama administration did, well, they don't like that. They don't like that at all. Now, another part of that would be, of course, doing $500 million oil deals with Putin in order to boost the economy. That's what Rex Tillerson had originally been put in the State Department to do. They couldn't do that because guess what? Russian sanctions, of course. So, look, let's be honest about what their motivations are. They're not there to help America. They're there to help themselves. It's a lot like when Americans put ourselves into other people's foreign policy. We're not advancing their interests. We're advancing our own. That's the whole point of interfering in the political process of another country. So, again, let's be honest about that. Now, back to Erickson here. Now, because of his alleged help, Erickson has reportedly received a, quote, target letter from prosecutors and may be charged for acting as a foreign agent. So, along with Butina, of course, Erickson might be in some very big trouble. Now, as Law and Crime notes, Butina changing her plea is actually incredibly important. Now, we knew that the government was seeking a maximum penalty of 5 years, depending on how much she cooperates with investigators. She could see that drastically reduced, and they might even talk about, after her serving her time, deporting her back to Russia. So, where I wouldn't be surprised if she cooperates to see her suddenly disappear, or have a piano fall on her, or suddenly get poisoned. Just saying. I would expect that. Anyway, now, what's also as important is that Butina is now the first Russian national to plead guilty to a crime related to influencing the 2016 election. Now, it also should be noted, though, that this was separate from Special Counsel Robert Mueller's investigation into Russian collusion involving Donald Trump, the Trump campaign, and Russia. So that means that right now, there isn't any proof of collusion between Donald Trump himself and Russia. So it is important to find out. At least right now, we don't know. Obviously, Robert Mueller's got the cards here. So keep that in mind. But what's interesting here is if Butina does have information on Russian collusion and gives that to gives that to the prosecutors, those prosecutors could hand that information off to Robert Mueller. And we don't know if that's the case, or that's going to happen, or if it already has happened. But what we do know is that the NRA was involved in this, because Torsion had obviously a big stock in the NRA, as well as Butina. So, and not only that, but you also had the NRA that gave Donald Trump millions and millions of dollars during his presidential campaign. So that is a possible link that they are looking into. So, and I hope they continue to look into that and see if there's any sort of connection there that they can make. But for now, we'll see what develops from this plea deal in the coming days and weeks. But it is pretty big news. Okay. So there's your breaking news on that. All right, moving on. So it's not shocking to find out that President Trump is not a smart person. He's not a very stable genius. Nonetheless, what was a question is how many Republicans know and what they're actually saying behind the scenes. Now, what's interesting is you have outgoing Senator Claire McCaskill that was on MSNBC, and she decided to dish on what she had heard from some of her Republican colleagues. Now, let me note that Claire McCaskill is a Democrat, but look, let's be honest about what she really is. She's Republican light, which is likely why she lost her election in the first place and is outgoing. Nonetheless, when she was asked on MSNBC to explain what words the Republicans, her GOP Senate colleagues, used to describe the president, she said this. Watch.
You gave an interview the other day in which you were talking about some of the Republican senators say about Donald Trump behind his back? Now, I'm not going to ask you to name the senators, obviously, but in terms of the lockstep, which was the march on the Republican side of the Senate, all professing loyalty to Trump, what are some of the adjectives these senators do use to describe him behind his back and in the cloakroom?
Nuts, weak, doesn't really understand government, doesn't care to understand anything complicated, asks and says the most unbelievable things in meetings that clearly shows he doesn't understand the subject matter, no intellectual curiosity.
Dangerous? Do they say?
I don't know that I've heard dangerous, but I will say this. I believe history will judge down the line those members of the Republican Party who have silently looked down and think they can just wait this out without even speaking up about the level of lying that goes on.
All right, so there's some interesting stuff in there, right? So for one, I immediately noticed, what did they say dangerous? What, are you kidding? No, of course they're not going to say dangerous. Why? It's because Donald Trump is doing everything that Republicans want them to do. The only thing is that, look, is that Trump is doing this in a way that is unpalatable when it comes to, oh, civility. Oh, I dare say, you are saying things that you're not actually supposed to say. No, you're not saying things in the right way. See, we usually hide our racism behind code words. And, you know, we make sure that we lie to the public. Well, now the thing about Donald Trump is he's too stupid. He's too stupid to cloak his real intentions. So he just comes out and blurts out and just says whatever is on his mind, which is very little. And of course, he's an old school racist and demagogue. So he just comes out and says it. Whereas, you know, a lot of Republican senators are like, oh, you know, we need to make sure that we rein in extremism. And Trump's like, when he tries to say something like that, it usually comes out as something like, we need to ban the Muslims. We have no choice. We have to. Well, no, you idiot. That's, I don't know why I'm helping him. I don't know why I'm helping him try to come up with ways to, you know, dampen his language so that, yes, only the hardcore racists understand what he's actually saying, whereas the media can go, oh, well, I don't know what Trump means. I guess maybe we do have a problem. Everything's 50-50. But no, that's not true. Everything is not 50-50. Everything is not even. Everything is not equal. He is saying these terrible things, and he means to do them. But as I said before, that's why Republicans don't find him dangerous, because, look, he supports nearly all Republican policies, except for, of course, on trade, which is the one thing where he's doing things that are not in favor of the normal corporate line, because it's actually hurting corporations. It's actually hurting also farmers and regular people. So that's the one thing that he differs on. But again, they don't call him dangerous because they want everything essentially that he wants, mainly tax cuts for the rich and deregulation. So let's be fair about that. But on the other stuff, nuts, no intellectual curiosity, doesn't understand government. You know, isn't that what the Republican Party actually wanted? I mean, look, I've heard the saying that they want someone just smart enough to sign the legislation they want. They got that in Donald Trump. The only problem is it came with a blustery ego and a whole bunch of racism. Naked, open white supremacy. So, hey, you know what? Be careful what you wish for. That said, they're not actually going to openly challenge Trump until there is a massive backlash groundswell from the GOP base. And look, the Republicans right now are holding on to a smaller and smaller subsection of voters, mainly white, uneducated voters, rural voters, right? That's who they're really holding on to, and evangelicals. Now, the evangelicals are ride or die. So, no, they're definitely not going to stop backing him. So you're going to have a lot of Republican senators that look at that constituency as, if we hold on to that as long as we can, we might be able to win just a few more elections, and then I'll either be dead and don't care, or I'll be working for my lobbyist buddies. So again, they won't care, and that's why they're not actually speaking out. But they will talk to Claire McCaskill. But as I said before, McCaskill is a Republican light. She basically is a Republican. She voted with the Republicans a significant amount of time and was always trying to reach out across the aisle. So, of course, she's going to be exposed to Republican lines of thinking because that's who she talks to. That's her bubble, right? But on this, she made a good point at the end that history is going to look back on this. And why is that? It's because she basically outed these guys as cowards. I'm not a huge fan of Claire McCaskill, but I think that was pretty significant criticism. Basically saying, yeah, these guys are the biggest cowards. Because while they say stuff like this behind Trump's back, they still continue to vote with him, and they still continue to support him because all they care about is their own power and their own votes. So that's significant because it shows who Republicans really are. In case you didn't already know, they're self-serving cowards. And that's who they will always be. Okay. So I'm going to take a quick break here. We'll come back. We have Donald Trump and Michael Cohen. The saga continues. So we'll be back with that story. Please send in your... Hold on here. Not done yet. Please send in your super chats. Got all sorts of technical problems here today. User error. So send in your super chats. I'll read them after the break. And we'll be back with more stories. All right. Thanks, guys. We'll see you in a minute. everybody, welcome back to the show. Around the Nation, right here, Jeff Waldorf with you. Super chat here from Sarge Tech says, just want to say thank you. Well, thank you, and you're welcome. I really appreciate that. That goes to help continue the show. A couple more comments here. I'm going to go to the chat for a second and basically quote Eldridge here. Says, McCaskill and Donnelly were both garbage, Republican-like piles of horse shit. I actually definitely agree with that. So I wasn't trying to make McCaskill sound good, because on policy she wasn't, and she was a big critic of Bernie Sanders. Oh, does anybody ever talk about how Bernie Sanders is a socialist? Yeah, that's why I say she's right-wing, because she uses right-wing rhetoric. So, yeah, but look, sometimes she can say things that she's right about. So, anyway, thank you for the super chat. Thank you for the comments as well. I appreciate that. And we will start, we will dive into the next story here. Okay. All right. So the fallout from Michael Cohen's plea agreement and sentencing, sentencing news. Let me start that again because I couldn't think of the word. It's one of those days. So the fallout from the plea agreement between Michael Cohen and prosecutors has continued. This morning, Donald Trump sent out a bunch of tweets attacking his former lawyer and fixer Cohen on Thursday. Now, in the process, he might have actually messed up when it comes to attorney-client privilege. Now, let me read you one of the tweets here. He said, "I never directed Michael Cohen to break the law. He was a lawyer and he is supposed to know the law. It is called advice of counsel, and a lawyer has a great liability if a mistake is made. That's why they get paid." Oh, well, now wait a minute. So what's wrong with that? How does that eliminate attorney-client privilege? Well, it turns out, according to ACLU attorney Joshua Block, asserting an advice of counsel defense, which is what he just tried to do, generally constitutes a waiver of attorney-client privilege. He said maybe the materials withheld by the special master Barbara Jones will eventually be turned over to the Southern District of New York after all. Now, the Southern District of New York, of course, is conducting one of the investigations into Trump and his business practices that is separate from the Mueller investigation, which is supposed to look into collusion. So the Southern District of New York is actually looking into more of the financial crimes related to the Trump organization to which Cohen had been employed by, right? So now that's interesting. Now, the really interesting part here is how much information they have about Cohen and Trump's business dealings when they did the raid on Cohen's home, hotel, and offices. Now, a lot of the documents, or a significant chunk of documents, were protected by attorney-client privilege. And so, with no objections from counsel or the prosecution, according to Law and Crime here, Barbara Jones, a former judge, was appointed to the special master in charge of making the determinations of what ultimately is covered by attorney-client privilege. Now, in doing this tweet and sending this tweet out, which is now official White House communication, by the way. So that's your official government communication from Donald Trump, his Twitter account. Those privilege designations on those documents could be gone. Now, Stuart M. Gerson wrote in the National Law Review, "It is well understood that raising an advice of counsel defense consequently waives attorney-client privilege. Moreover, because of a limited waiver of the privilege is rarely recognized, the door will likely open to an examination of any relevant communication between the party and the attorney." So now they could probably look through those documents and find anything that could be related to Trump Russia or Trump money laundering or any sort of illegal thing that the Trump organization could have been up to. Uh-oh. Now, what's interesting as well, he continues, even beyond the area that encompasses the particular alleged advice of counsel at issue, meaning they could potentially look at any crime, even if it's not related. So they could now poke through those papers, allegedly, of course, poke through those papers and find evidence of other financial crimes that could get him in major trouble. Now, beyond the prospect of any sort of limited waiver being rarely recognized, a federal court in South Carolina just last year affirmed the legal principle that such a waiver is exhaustive. They said that courts in the circuit have found that when a party asserts an advice of counsel defense, the privilege waiver applies to advice received during the entire period the misconduct is alleged to have been ongoing. That was a 2017 decision made by the federal courts in South Carolina. They noted that it basically covers an area even up to and during trial. In other words, once a defendant makes the advice of counsel defense, the alleged advice from counsel is fair game for the prosecution, any and all advice from his counsel. This is basically, according to Law and Crime, a complete evisceration of the privilege for defendants, at least in the district cited above. Now, wait a minute here. That's just in South Carolina, right? I mean, that's what the South Carolina federal court, district court, had ruled in a different case. Well, as far as I know, Trump hasn't committed any alleged crimes in South Carolina, right? He didn't operate a hotel there. He didn't operate a casino. He didn't operate anything in South Carolina. That is true, but wait. In the Southern District of New York, the same rule has been in effect for quite some time, and was also recently affirmed in a 2015 case against a Wells Fargo employee who was being prosecuted for civil fraud alongside the bank. So, again, separate from the Mueller investigation, but there is another investigation from the Southern District of New York, which was looking into Cohen. So now, Cohen and Trump, by the way, if they find anything, now that they could look into these documents that relates to the Mueller investigation, they can pass it off. Oops. Again, in theory, Donald Trump may have just screwed himself over Twitter because he's stupid. Because he's not smart enough to realize that he just screwed himself out of attorney-client privilege. Oh, no. So now on the documents, right? So how many documents are we talking about that they could look through? Well, Special Master Jones, which, by the way, is kind of an awesome name, right? I am the Special Master. All right. She determined that there were 7,146 documents rated from Michael Cohen's offices and residences are privileged. 285 are highly personal, and 8 are partially privileged. So, over 7,000 documents between Cohen, and it could be from between Cohen and Trump and Cohen and other clients as well. I wonder if Sean Hannity's in there. Oh, wouldn't that be insane? Sean Hannity had retained Michael Cohen at one point. And by the way, it is fun to see that Hannity had scrubbed his entire Twitter feed of tweets in favor of Michael Cohen. I wonder who else is in there. Interesting. It's going to be interesting to find out if we can end up looking through those documents, or I should say if prosecutors are able to look through those documents now that they're might no longer be covered by attorney-client privilege. Not all of them are going to be related to Trump, obviously, but it wouldn't be shocking that if there is a significant amount of those documents that are related to Trump. And thanks to his dumb ass, and his Twitter fingers, this privileged and protected status of these documents are now in serious jeopardy. Oh, man. Oh, if you didn't think Trump's week could get worse, that he could somehow mess it up even more for himself, well, here you go. To that I add, tick-tock, tick-tock. Man. Very stable genius. Okay. Moving on. All right. So we have some rare good news on a congressional vote. Earlier today, the Senate voted to end the Trump administration's support for the Saudi-led attacks in Yemen. Now, senators had voted on the Sanders co-sponsored bill 56 to 41 in favor of ending that support. Now, this is the first time Congress has used war powers to challenge any U.S. military involvement overseas. And, of course, it was spearheaded by Bernie Sanders and Mike Lee and another Democrat. Now, Sanders, after this, said, quote, "Today we tell the despotic regime in Saudi Arabia that we will not be a part of their military adventurism." Awesome. Now, along with all the Democrats, you also had a half dozen Republican senators that joined in voting to pass this Yemen resolution. Now, this is one of two resolutions involved with Saudi Arabia. This is, of course, to end the support for the war in Yemen, but there was also another one that condemned Mohammed bin Salman, Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, for the murder of Jamal Khashoggi. Khashoggi. Sorry about that. Again, one of those days. Now, this resolution would require the U.S. to stop providing U.S. intelligence, targeting assistance, and bombing, and other military support to the Saudi government and its allies in the Yemen conflict. Now, only 6 Republicans, right? But still, 6 Republicans is at least better than no Republicans. Now, one of them was surprisingly Lindsey Graham. Now, before the Senate vote, 14 Republicans did vote to advance this bill, but obviously did not vote in favor. So at least they had a conversation, and from that, 6 Republicans, including Lindsey Graham, said, you know what? No, we're going to stop this. We're going to stop this, our support of this disastrous, horrific war in Yemen. Now, Graham, who was part of a bipartisan group of senators that pressed for sanctions on any Saudis, including the Crown Prince, found responsible for Khashoggi's murder and a suspension in U.S. arms sales for the kingdom. Now, he said, quote, this is Graham, "I'm never going to let this go until things change in Saudi Arabia. Do you really want to transfer your most advanced technology to somebody who thinks it's okay to lure a journalist to a consulate in Turkey and chop him up? The Crown Prince is so toxic, so tainted, so flawed that I can't ever see myself doing business with Saudi Arabia unless there is a change in leadership." Those are incredibly strong words from Lindsey Graham, who is generally not the strongest person, especially when it comes to Donald Trump. Because Donald Trump, if this ever gets to his desk, he says, no, I'm going to veto it. You know why? Because I don't care. I don't care if Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman chops people up. I don't care because I love Saudi Arabia. The Saudis, well, they go and buy my condos. They buy my apartments. They rent this stuff. They rent rooms in Trump Tower. No, they give me money. And so, yes, I love the Saudis. I don't care about journalists. I have called the press the enemy of the people. So how dare you, congressman, turn against me? You know, that's gonna cause some problems in the budding bromance between Lindsey Graham and Donald Trump. But I actually do have to give him credit for standing up and saying, you know what? No, I'm not going to vote in favor of helping Saudi Arabia, of arming the Saudis against Yemen. And so, hey, credit where credit is due, right? But now, there's another part about that statement that does kind of worry me, though, right? Again, suspending arms sales, I'm all in favor of it, right? Yes, let's not be the world's, arms locker. Let's not sell weapons to everybody. That would be fantastic, right? But knowing Lindsey Graham, for one, is a gigantic war hawk. So when he starts talking about, I'm not going to support a regime unless they change their leadership, I keep thinking, oh no. Regime change, where have we heard that one before? Now, I do think Saudi Arabia should change their leadership, right? I just don't think we should have any part of doing it. And knowing how much of a warmonger Lindsey Graham is, I get a little concerned. I just get a little concerned. That's all. That said, Mohammed bin Salman, not the leader that Saudi Arabia needs. I actually believe they should be democratic as far as actually allowing elections and pushing forward with equality, and they're not doing that. Get rid of the monarchy, right? Now, let's go to the other bill, right? So now senators also unanimously approved a separate non-binding resolution naming Saudi Arabia's crown prince, to whom I will now refer to as Mohammed bin Salman, as responsible for Khashoggi's murder. Now, the resolution introduced by Senate Foreign Relations Committee Chairman Bob Corker, another Republican, calls on the Saudi government to ensure appropriate accountability for all those responsible in Jamal Khashoggi's murder, and urges the kingdom to moderate its increasingly erratic foreign policy, among other steps. Now, of course, what's going on here, Yemen is essentially a proxy war with Iran. That's why you have a lot of Republicans that are saying, oh, no, we need to support Saudi Arabia no matter what they do, because Iran. But let's get to Corker here before we get to those Republicans. Corker said the measure will put Congress on record as holding the Crown Prince accountable for Khashoggi's death. Now, the United States Senate has said the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, I'm saying that, is responsible for the murder of Jamal Khashoggi. That is a strong statement. I think it speaks to the values that we hold dear. Well, look, at least Bob Corker is showing some sort of values, but why not before? Why did it take the death of a journalist to do something about Yemen? Right now, I believe the number is about 85,000 people have been killed in this civil war. A lot of those people are innocent people who haven't done anything. And there are 12 million Yemenis that are on the verge of starvation. And this is a major humanitarian disaster. And just now, we're actually voting on it. And by the way, this comes a day after the House GOP decided not to take up this legislation. So, and that's, of course, thanks to Paul Ryan and a lot of these Republicans, as well as 5 Democratic congressmen. So let's be fair about that. While the Senate has actually got their shit together, the House certainly does not. But they could, of course, and they plan to, Ro Khanna plans to bring that piece of legislation back up in the next House session. So, but I don't think people in Yemen can wait. Now, let me go here to some of the Republican opposition, and that's Marco Rubio. Marco Rubio, of course, he says, quote, there's a threat in the Middle East posed by Iran and their ambitions which must be confronted, and says that the U.S.-Saudi alliance would be shattered if the U.S. ends its military role in Yemen and the war could spiral further out of control. Now, I don't believe that. That's classic fear-mongering from pro-war Republicans like Marco Rubio. No, look, I wouldn't actually mind if our alliance was shattered by this, because what are we doing being friends with one of the most extremist countries in the Middle East? And of course, it comes down to the petrodollar, as well as being against Iran and in favor of Israel. So that's what's going on here. That's why we're in favor of Saudi Arabia. A lot of these Republicans. Not only that, but look, let's be honest, Saudi Arabia, and I've done stories on this, they spent millions of dollars bribing our politicians. So, yeah, of course. You also had the defense industry, who makes money by selling weapons to countries in the Middle East like Saudi Arabia, and they don't want to give up their power. They don't want to give up their money either. So, of course, you know, it makes sense as to why so many Republicans voted against this, but that's also why it makes it so much more important to highlight the Republicans who did vote in favor of ending this conflict. So, I mean, let's give credit where credit is due. But I think the person who deserves the most credit here is Bernie Sanders. Now, Bernie Sanders, he's been talking about this. He's been speaking about this. He's been spreading the message. He's been doing social media, videos on Facebook about this, and gave a great speech on the floor before the vote had happened. Look, the guy helped get it done. He was out there. He was pushing this bill. He was getting a bipartisan consensus, and was able to get enough votes to at least have the Senate pass this. So that is significant. So for all those centrist Democrats, Donut, Twitter, etc., who say, oh, Bernie Sanders, what has he ever done? Well, you know, he just helped the Senate pass a resolution to end the war in Yemen. That's significant. And by the way, the reason that this will help, I think, end the war in Yemen is because right now, the Saudis and Yemen are looking at doing a tentative peace agreement and ending that conflict. So now they're talking because now the Saudis know that, oh crap, now America is having some serious doubts about keeping us supplied with weapons and supporting us. Well, if America's not going to support us anymore, well then shit. Here we go. Let's just wrap this up and come to a peace agreement, which ultimately I think is going to be a great thing for the region. So hopefully, as I said before, this will push the Saudis into a peace agreement. But again, I want to give thanks to Senator Bernie Sanders, all the Democrats that supported this amendment, that co-sponsored this amendment, Republicans like Mike Lee and ironically Lindsey Graham, who did push back against President Trump. See, this is how you do fairness, right? You actually praise Republicans and Democrats for doing the right thing. And of course, go after them, criticize them when they do the wrong thing. That's what you're supposed to do. So now, like I said, credit where credit is due. And hopefully we can end this ridiculous, disastrous conflict and this humanitarian crisis. Okay. Again, that's some rare good news for once. Last story here for you guys. So the media loves talking about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I mean, why wouldn't we? She's got fantastic policies. She's really pushing the Green New Deal, Medicare for all. She's engaged on social media. She's got an amazing following, and she's generally a very good, fantastic speaker, politician, etc. Right? Now, there are some problems with some of the coverage that she's gotten. For one, she's, of course, attacked Fox News for having some strange obsession with her. And those attacks are very, very amusing. But there's also a lot of criticism, you should say, coming from many in the center, right? And then there are some very strange articles, including one that says that she should run for 2020. Well, now, wait a minute here. So now, Ocasio-Cortez, she sees this article. This is from this is a Vox article from Matthew Iglesias, right? Who says, hey, you know what? Even though that she's not actually going to be able to run, she should still run in 2020. But why? And I'm not asking this question. Ocasio-Cortez is also asking this question. In fact, she says, in response to this article, quote, "How about no?" Hey, that is a fairly clear answer. She's not interested in running in 2020, right? Now, she also said, and I love this, sometimes political media is too fixated on personalities instead of policies. The whole country just went through an exhausting midterm election. We need a break. Can we instead talk about healthcare, a living wage, legalizing cannabis, a Green New Deal, and other issues? Yes. Yes. That exactly. And again, she can't actually run for 2020. But even if she could, it's one of those things where, hey, instead of doing the horse race, let's actually talk about the issues, right? And again, she was responding to an article from Iglesias. Now, he said that she should run despite not being 35 years old. He said, quote, "It's ridiculous to have an age limit on the presidency." And he said that people under younger than 29 are, quote, "routinely trusted with life and death situations. While the law prevents anyone under the age of 35 from becoming president, we currently have a septuagenarian in the White House whose frequent nonsensical diatribes and notoriously scattered Twitter outbursts repeatedly raised a prospect of mental decline." Now, look, that's an interesting conversation if you want to have it. But I think a lot of people right now do not want to have it, especially Ocasio-Cortez. Now, here's an idea, right? Again, if you want to have this, a discussion on, oh, maybe we should lower the age for president or abolish the age. Okay, that's an interesting conversation to have. And you could have good points on both sides, right? But here's what I think this is about, right? And again, this is my analysis of this. Iglesias is, I think, a member of the establishment, right? Establishment press. What this is, I think, is a way to deflect and distract from talking about actual issues. So now, what are, establishment figures trying to ignore? Green New Deal, Medicare for all. Those are incredibly popular policies and very, very ambitious. So Democrats, establishment figures, are like, oh my God, no, let's talk about something else. I know, let's talk about the horse race. Yes, horse race politics. Let's go. In fact, Iglesias, in his article, mentions that, quote, "The top two Democrats in national polling, Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden, are 77 and 76, respectively." So that's a knock on Bernie Sanders, for one. Bernie Sanders should be the front runner. The only reason he is not the front runner is because he is loathed by the establishment, who continue to try to push for younger and younger people. Now, the reason I think he's pushing for Ocasio-Cortez to run is not because he wants to have a fundamental conversation about changing the age to run for office. No, it's because, for one, she has no chance of winning because she wouldn't legally be allowed to run. And for two, she would create a big distraction. And then, of course, you would have the establishment attack her on if she decides to run. Oh, it's not legal, for one. And even if it was, oh, she's got no experience. She's got no qualifications. She's a political neophyte. Hasn't gotten anything done. That's because she hasn't even started her job yet. Doesn't know how politics works. And, oh, look how ambitious she is. So, on and on, right? So let's be honest about, I think, what the motivations are for running this article. And again, and I'm not against having a conversation on this, but here's the thing. Look, Ocasio-Cortez hasn't even had a chance to build up a legislative record. Bernie Sanders has. And by the way, I think I have no doubt that she'll make an amazing congresswoman. I'm not worried about that. I think Ocasio-Cortez is fantastic. But at the same time, let's not talk about her running for president, but let's actually talk about the issues that she's espousing. So, and that, of course, is Medicare for all, free college, abolishing ICE, Green New Deal, all this stuff that, for the most part, is incredibly popular and stuff that Americans actually need. And they really don't want her to talk about policy. and they want to find some ways to attack her. And so I think this is just another way to try to distract from this and to not have this conversation and not talk about policy. So this, again, more establishment tricks. And that's what I think this is. And thankfully, she's calling this out. And she's showing that unlike a lot of other politicians, she's not in it for herself or her own policy. She's actually in it to do good policy. She's not in it for her own power. I said policy, but she's absolutely in it for good policies that help the American people. So all this 2020 nonsense, look, it's just a way to try to drum up that 2020 horse race, maybe get a couple of clicks, as well as distract from the things that actually matter. Medicare for all. And by the way, it's also a good distraction to get you off of talking about how most Democrats right now still don't support Medicare for all, still don't support a Green New Deal. That stuff should be the focus. Getting Democratic politicians on board for these policies instead of jumping into that horse race coverage, which you know the establishment media is already trying to do. Just to be aware. Okay. All right. That's it. That's all I got for you guys today. Thank you for going around the nation with me. See if I have any more super chats to read before the end of the show. Metrohen says, thanks for powering through while not feeling 100%. Hope you feel better soon. Thank you, Metro. So the tea, by the way, that I referenced earlier, and I'm thinking that you were talking about that. It is ginger and peach, right? And it's supposed to be for calm stomach help. So guys, I've got like acid reflux really bad, right? And I should be taking medication for it, but I don't have insurance. I can't afford insurance, which is insane. I can't afford to insure myself under the ACA. Hashtag we need Medicare for all, like, now. So that helps me feel better when I get, acid attacks and stuff like that. So that's why I drink that. So I actually drink it very often. I eat Tums like they're freaking candy. So anyway, that's an explanation on that. But thank you, Metro. I appreciate that. Thank you to all those who support the show through the super chats, through Patreon, through liking and sharing. And of course, if you want to pick up a mug, you can go ahead and do that. I'd appreciate that as well. All right, guys. Thank you for tuning in. Like and share. And TYT Nation is next. Or I'm sorry, TYT Live is next. Okay. Love you guys. And remember, change begins with you. Good night.